Alright, so I wanted to do a little review slash discussion for Transformers Dark of the Moon since it just hit its 10th anniversary, which to me is absolutely nuts. I remember being so excited for this movie when it was coming out. That was summer 2011. I just got done with my sophomore year in high school going into my junior year, and I was absolutely hyped for this movie. So going into before the movie came out, I kept up with a lot of the news coming out, stuff about the toys, leaks, reveals. There was, I believe it was an Amazon leak of the movie adaptation comic book. It had a little thing where it's like, take a look inside or something like that. But instead of just having a few pages to preview what's in the comic book, it had the whole entire thing, including the big spoiler of the movie being that Sentinel Prime is actually the bad guy and betrays the Autobots and kills Ironhide. So I knew that going in. I think, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I knew most of the characters that died in the movie, I think. Going to see it, I went with quite a few friends. I want to say that there was around 10 of us. I can't remember exactly. But it was a fun time. Unfortunately, we were kind of the douchebag kids because me and there were a couple of others immediately sitting beside each other that did talk a good bit. There was a guy and his girlfriend there who, during the final battle, he did tell us to be quiet. And then I remember at the end, me and a bunch of the friends clapped. One of my friends who had already started to leave the theater heard the same person remark that we were all, I think, idiots or something like that. So, fun time. But, I had a good time. By the way, I do not endorse being a loud, obnoxious douche in the theater. That was just me being overly excited and really wanting to talk with people while watching the movie. But my thoughts. At the time, I loved it. It was honestly probably my favorite movie. I was really just oblivious to a lot of the very apparent flaws. And let me get into this now. I genuinely do not think this is a bad movie by any stretch. I think, kind of like with the Transformers movies on the whole, except for The Last Night, I do think that they are overhated and a lot of their flaws are overblown. Dark of the Moon, I think, is probably the best of the bunch. The only one that I'd say really comes close is the first Transformers. Now, granted, my personal favorite is Revenge of the Fallen. I'm sure somebody's cringing at that, but I love that movie, flaws and all. That one kind of holds a special place just because the build up to that one was when I was really becoming a fan. So, for me personally, there was no way that movie was going to fail. But Dark of the Moon, I think, is the best. It has some amazing action, possibly still some of the best visuals out of the entire series. Obviously the CGI is great. The score is fantastic. I think a lot of the acting is fine for what it is. I'm not going to say anyone's like a standout or anything. The storyline was decent. I love the stuff with the human conspiracy with the moon landing, and obviously a lot of the later movies went pretty overboard with that stuff, but here I thought it was done the best. There was just a good mystery to it, a pretty good twist with Sentinel Prime, some pretty good characters. The robot designs were still pretty awesome. I don't know, I just felt there's a lot to like in this one. One of the biggest negatives for me, though, is that I do think that the Transformers dying isn't really handled too well. Ironhide's death scene is good, but there's no reaction really after the fact, aside from Optimus looking sad when he shows up at the nest base. The only other big emotion really is when you think Bumblebee is going to die, he doesn't. Wheeljack/Q dying kind of has its moment, but Bumblebee just kind of says, goodbye, my old friend, and then that's kind of it. A lot of the Decepticons, to me, that's kind of a big thing, because this was originally supposed to be the end. You could tell that Michael Bay was killing off the Decepticons just to put a period on everything. There are some times where it really just kind of feels like sort of a checklist, where it's like, okay, we took out Starscream, okay, now Soundwave's dead, now Shockwave's dead, now Megatron's dead. Other than that, and sometimes, and this is kind of a flaw with all of the movies, just the humans being a little too involved in stuff. Otherwise, I don't really have many issues with the movie, to be honest. The first hour, I guess, can be a bit slow. I don't hate the job hunting stuff as much as some people do. It's literally 5 minutes of the movie. Get over it. And then there's the Deep Wang scene with my boy Mr. Chow from The Hangover. Again, that's another scene where it's just y'all are really hating on this, but it's a minute in the movie. It's not even that long. And then he almost immediately dies after the fact. Calm down. The human characters, for the most part, were fine. Sam Witwicky, I will say, I do think he is a bit whiny in this movie and a bit obnoxious. He does have a lot of good moments, I feel. I do love his freak out with the car when he's kicking it in front of Patrick Dempsey. I actually don't mind the freak out either when he goes to the nest base, even though maybe him screaming it kind of becomes a bit much. Carly was alright. I didn't mind her. I do wish she had a bit more to do, because Michaela, I felt was kind of an active character for the most part. Carly she's just just sort of a damsel in distress, even though she does the whole goading Megatron into going after Sentinel. Simmons and Dutch are great, though. They're awesome. I love the actors. I love the characters. They're great. Lennox, Epps, awesome. I actually like Charlotte Mearing a good bit. She's pretty cool. Human characters, for the most part, didn't really have a problem with them. Transformer characters, on the whole, all pretty solid. Following Revenge of the Fallen, Jolt just kind of disappears along with the twins. The twins were supposed to die in the movie, but they decided to cut them out. You can still see what was going to be their new vehicle modes in the backgrounds of shots. They were supposed to be killed when Ironhide is killed by Sentinel Prime. They were going to have the same treatment with the Rust gun. Jolt dies off in the comics, but it really just seems like within the movie itself, they weren't planning on bringing him back, period, which sucks, because I like Jolt a lot. Optimus Prime is pretty good in the movie. I think he has a pretty good story, I guess, with dealing with the fact that Sentinel is a traitor, and that's his mentor who taught him everything he knew. I thought he had some good stuff. Of course, a lot of people complain because this is when he's possibly at his most, I use this word loosely, but at his most bloodthirsty, just because he does kill a lot of people. He mows down a lot of Decepticons in what I call the mile-long rampage scene. I don't have a problem with the so-called murder prime in the movies, so you won't really hear complaints about that from me. Even the ending scene where he kills Megatron and Sentinel, I don't care what anybody says. Megatron was not offering a sincere truce, and Sentinel was a traitor, and after all he had done, he deserved to be killed. I don't care about the whole, he was begging for his life. It's just like, dude, stop. The way I took it was him just trying to, even to the end, he was just frustrated that Optimus didn't see his point of view. I like that Sentinel was a conflicted type character. He had a bit more going on than just being a one-note bad guy, but I think he deserved what he got, personally. Ironhide was cool until he died. Sideswipe was pretty awesome. The Mexican standoff scene with Ironhide was great. He gets some close-ups. He gets a few lines, and Sideswipe's my boy, and he has one of the best designs in the movie, so it's awesome. Dino / Mirage, Wheeljack / Q, and Brains were the new additions to the movie. Brains was pretty good. I thought he was pretty funny. He worked well with Wheelie. Mirage / Dino, they call him Dino in the movie. He was supposed to be Mirage. I think he's Mirage in everything but the movie itself and the recent studio series toy, because in the video game he was Mirage, in the comics he was. Same with Wheeljack. He was Wheeljack in everything but the movie itself, although in the credits it does say Q / Wheeljack or Wheeljack / Q. To me, they're both Wheeljack and Mirage. They're pretty cool. They have their moments. I do think that Wheeljack's death scene is kind of sad for what it is, even though we didn't really get to know him. But I thought he was okay. A lot of people find his design creepy. The Einstein head is definitely a little off-putting, but I don't really mind it. Mirage's design is awesome, though. I love that design. Then there's the Wreckers. I love them. I do kind of like how before the movie came out, people were talking about how they were going to be Southern hicks because they're NASCARs. Their designs look like they're based off of stereotypical NASCAR fans. Like Leadfoot is an overweight guy with a bald head and glasses. And granted, they all have the sunglasses look. Roadbuster kind of has a cap and sort of a mullet, and Topspin kind of has a mullet look too. I thought they were awesome though. They needed to do more, and their alternate modes are the only time I've ever cared for NASCAR. Just being covered in machine guns and looking awesome. For the Decepticons, a good chunk of them are returning. Well, I say good chunk, but it's really Megatron, Starscream, and Soundwave. Well, and Barricade, too. Barricade doesn't really do a whole lot. He's just kind of there, I feel like, just to be like, oh, hey, look, it's Barricade. Megatron in this movie, he is, quote-unquote, weak, physically speaking, but I don't mind Megatron in the movie. He has a lot of good lines. He looks great. That design is really cool. It's not my favorite live-action Megatron design. My personal favorite is Revenge of the Fallen. I actually like all of the designs Megatron's had. But he looks cool, even though we only see him transform once, and he's only in the truck mode briefly. And he really only wears the tarp hood a handful of times, and it's very brief. I didn't really mind him dying. Granted, I would have maybe preferred that he lived. I do think that the truce ending that got changed from the comics and novels would have been okay. Starscream's good. He has a lot of very Starscreamy lines. I think that Charlie Adler was great in the voice role. He did a lot of hand rolling, which it's weird. I think it's simultaneously a bit bit much and spot on. And then there's Soundwave, who has come down to Earth. I wish they either would have kept the satellite mode entirely, or that they would have at least kept the head design from the satellite form. Because I don't mind the Dark of the Moon Soundwave design. I don't mind the head as is. It's just out of the two head designs, I prefer the one from Revenge of the Fallen. But he's fine, even if there are times where I feel like he's a bit too generic Decepticon. But on the whole, I like movie Soundwave. Laserbeak was fantastic. This is my personal favorite Laserbeak. I thought he was actually kind of scary at points. The voice was great. The design was pretty good. I've heard some complaints with the fact that he kind of looks like, I guess, like a buzzard or something like that, or like a vulture. I don't really mind. I think he looks fine. Yeah, he's pretty cool. There's also Igor. If you followed along with some of the concept art stuff, he's supposedly Longhaul's head. I don't really see that too much. I know that was in the concept art. In the movie, aside from him being green and kind of sharing details, I don't really think that was what they decided to go with. The dreads were pretty cool in the movie, with my favorite being Crankcase. I just love the whole robotic predator look. Crowbar is pretty cool too, though. Hatchet's rad, but he dies almost instantly. There's Shockwave, who was touted as the main villain before the movie came out. A red herring for the Sentinel Prime twist, which really sucks because Shockwave looks fantastic. That's honestly one of my favorite Shockwave designs, if not my favorite. He looks very cool, pretty scary. He has what I like in that it has enough characteristics of Shockwave. It's still doing something entirely new. He just looks pretty awesome. But sadly, he doesn't really do a whole lot. I think people overdo the whole he got killed by a parachute thing, because one, parachute didn't kill him. And two, he's in the middle of a battle. He gets covered by this thing that he probably doesn't even know what the hell a parachute is. And he's being fired at in all directions by the wreckers, the soldiers. There's explosions going off because the other Decepticons are getting bombed. I didn't have a problem with that. I think people really overblew that whole thing of just being dumb. Like, I thought it was fine. Plus, I mean, he's the first Decepticon in the movies since Brawl, I feel like, to really put up a long fight, because he takes a lot of damage. Hell, Optimus ruptured the side of his body and he seemed like he was still going before he got pinned down and had his eye ripped out through his throat. Shockwave was definitely a missed opportunity. I don't really mind him in the movie, but I do wish he was done better. Then, of course, he has his pet Driller. That's pretty cool, but like kind of has only a couple scenes, and then the big action scene to knock over the building. It's cool on the whole. Maybe that could have gone somewhere else, honestly. Although that, I mean, I will say that is a pretty cool action scene. And since I haven't mentioned him yet, since he isn't really either to a certain extent, there is Sentinel Prime. I mean, he is more so an Autobot than a Decepticon in this movie. You know, he's talking about teaming up with the Decepticons and working with them. I don't think he's ever like, I am a Decepticon now, or anything like that. But Sentinel was great. Of course, he's voiced by the late, great Leonard Nimoy, who was fantastic. I thought he had some pretty good lines. Of course, he quoted Star Trek at one point, which I know some people were mad about. His design was pretty good. His face got kind of close to being a little too human-like for my taste, but I feel like it kind of rode the line, so I didn't necessarily mind it. But I love how the head design was pretty much Optimus Prime's, except for like the forehead crest and the face. I do like that similarity there. He looks cool. I like the fire truck form. He was a great character. He's probably, in my opinion, probably the second best main villain for the movies. I think that the first, at least when you take all 5 of the Michael Bay movies, I think that Lockdown is probably the best, and then Sentinel afterwards. Although if someone said that they preferred Sentinel over Lockdown, I wouldn't really argue with that, because Sentinel Prime is a pretty cool character. The action is pretty good in the movie. I love the highway chase. That's probably the best scene, going from the dreads chasing them into the really cool slow motion transforming scene with Sam and Bumblebee, into the Mexican standoff with Ironhide, Sideswipe, and Crankcase and Crowbar. That was all cool. And of course, the last hour of the movie is just one big action scene pretty much. For me, the best part of that was probably when Optimus flies in to save the humans from the Driller, and then when he flies down and drops off the jetpack and goes on, again, what I call the mile-long rampage. That scene's pretty awesome. The fight with Sentinel was good. I feel like there's too many cuts, though. Like, I will say, for me, a lot of the action in the Michael Bay movies is good. I really wish there were a lot better one-on-one fights in these. Now, Optimus and Sentinel is good. Like, it's got a lot of good moments. It's just stuff for me feels too quick. Like, even when it kind of gets going on the bridge, Sentinel cuts off Optimus Prime's arm and then Megatron runs in. But yeah, on the whole, the action's good. Also, I really like the opening Cybertron scene. That part is awesome. I had a moment of getting super hype in the movie theater when it started, because it starts using the bits from the track I Rise, You Fall from Revenge of the Fallen, and I like that track a lot. I was just like, yo, they're using music for the Revenge of of the Fallen that's awesome. And then they did the same during the Chicago takeover bit with Heed Our Warning that was never used in the Revenge of the Fallen movie. But that opening Cybertron scene was awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of the design of Cybertron in these movies with the whole like layered honeycomb thing. I don't mind it. It's just not my ideal version of Cybertron. When I think of Cybertron, I tend to think of the Cybertron from the games War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. I like that version a lot. Again, it's not bad. I just kind of wish there was a bit more to it. The whole thing with the Ark flying around and being chased by Decepticons, and that really cool scene with them firing the missile that has a bunch of smaller missiles that like twirl around and stuff. That part was super cool. And the whole opening scene with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin going to the moon and checking everything out, I really dug that a lot. When it came out, Dark of the Moon got better reviews than Revenge of the Fallen. Some still weren't really fans of it. It seemed like people loved it and people hated it. There are a lot of people that look back on it fondly. I certainly do. I love Dark of the Moon. If I had to look at it, I guess subjectively, I'd probably give the movie like an 8 or a 9. For me, it's perfectly entertaining. I love it. I don't really have many flaws with it. Maybe objectively, it's probably more like maybe a 6 or a 7. Definitely has flaws. I find it to be a very solid movie. I do think it's the best of the Michael Bay Transformers, and even over Bumblebee, I think it's still the best Transformers movie. Is it perfect? No. But is it pretty solid? Yeah, I like the movie a lot, and I'm just so surprised it's 10 years old, and I think after 10 years, it's held up pretty well for the most part, and I mean, it's definitely better than what followed. Granted, I like Age of Extinction. I defend that movie. I do think that one also gets overhated a decent bit. It's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be, but it's not great, but I enjoy it, and of course, it's better than The Last Night. Just about anything's better than The Last Night, but even I don't hate that movie. It's just The Last Night's not good. But yeah, this has been me talking about Transformers Dark of the Moon. What do you think about it? Has your opinion on it changed within the past 10 years? And, you know, tell me in the comments, what's your favorite action scene from the movie? Who's your favorite character? What's your favorite design? Let me know. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you for checking this out. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe consider subscribing so you can check out more of my reviews and discussions and stuff like that. Yeah, thanks for watching and have a great day.